Time to talk Miami football in prime time with our primetime guy, Cam Underwood from State of the U. Been jumping on here for a long, long time, setting us straight on the Canes, going way, way back. And we always appreciate the time with Cam. Jump on into the live chat over the next hour. Questions, comments, anything that you've got for Cam and or myself concerning Miami and by extension the ACC, college football across the board with the spring game in the books a little less than a week ago. Cam, how we doing tonight?
Feel good, yeah. So, back here for another live stream show. Good to be here, good to be seen, good to be heard. And talk some Canes. So I'm just wearing a classic MIAMI, with the U on there. So no design, no logos or slogans really, other than the iconic U, which I'm glad to see Mark got the helmet placement behind him right today, checking that before we went on. Right there. So, I feel great. How about you?
No one else on the top shelf tonight.
That's right.
No one else on the top shelf. Okay, I'm feeling good. I am feeling good, ready to roll. Took a very, very quick power nap. I'm not one to do that, but I needed that.
Okay.
All right, everybody. We've got a Florida State commit in Untitled Kelly, strong side defensive end, number 11 in the country, according to 247 Sports, or do I say a former Florida State commit?
There we go.
And very, very highly rated by 247 Sports in particular. So the composite has him at number 215, but 247 in particular really likes him just outside that top 100 at number 101. And again, a top 12 player in the state of Florida if you just look at 247 Sports. So everything I'm hearing is he's headed your way.
That has been something that we've been pushing for a while with Nigel Lee Kelly. Fort Lauderdale Dillard High School. So John Ford went there. Stefan Zayas, who's at UCF as a defensive end, was on that line. There was another guy who went Power 5 from that same line. Previously with John, it was John Ford, Stefan Zayas, and another kid who went Power 5. I forget the name right now. Dillard has been it's Central Fort Lauderdale. It's one of the iconic programs down here. Isaac Bruce went there. A long history of great football. The Soul Bowl here in Broward is Dillard versus Ely. So the marching bands are strong there also. Look, I used to be a teacher. I'll tell you, Dillard is the magnet, the only arts magnet in our district for Broward County. So you have great artistic endeavors at that same school. Have a friend's sister I know who teaches out there. Another couple people I know teach out there. So Central Fort Lauderdale, it's a iconic name is Dillard High School. And they always have players. And one of the best basketball programs in the state of Florida in terms of men's and women's, boys and girls basketball as well. Nigel Lee Kelly comes from a place that produces players. Now, it might not be Aquinas, because Aquinas, they kind of leveled up in the 90s and they decided, they're going to do things a little differently. They're going to recruit a little differently, subsidize some of the tuition for some players to come over and things like that. So they might not have the proliferation of numbers currently, going Power 5, going big time college as an Aquinas or IMG Academy or anything. But when you have a defensive lineman, especially recently from Dillard High School of this caliber, you need to take note. And again, like I said, starting defensive tackle John Ford went there. Boom. So that's a direct connection between Miami and the Dillard High School program. Nigel Lee Kelly looks like, he's a blue chip kid at defensive end. He's one of the guys that I mentioned. Well, I didn't even mention him. I don't even know. In a couple 5 weeks ago, I went down some of the top blue chip ends in South Florida this cycle. I think I mentioned Nigel Lee Kelly. I might not have even. But he's a guy who's up there with the best of the best. Was committed to Florida State for a while. And that was a placeholder commitment. It's kind of the commitment that Miami used to get from guys. We're going to hold that or commit there, hold that spot to really push the offers that we want. I heard some people, shout out to Kev, only Kev, but from the Big Three roll up, because I don't really mess with the other two guys. But the Florida State guy, who's a full-time journalist with 247, he fake newsberg. He when they last recorded a podcast, I saw Kev put this on the timeline. Newberg was like, "Oh, hey, Nigel Kelly's going to be at the Florida State spring game, and hopefully that's going to shut up some of this nonsense about him maybe going somewhere else." And then he decommitted 4 days after the spring game. So no, that did not lock up Nigel Kelly to Florida State. That actually incited the opposite movement. And hopefully Miami's able to swoop in. Obviously, we need, between the top guys, that being Marvin Jones Jr., Kenyatta Jackson, Nigel Kelly, Dante Anderson, Shamar Stewart, probably another couple guys. You need to get 3 or 4 of those guys, and especially from the top of that list. And Nigel Kelly is going to be one of those guys towards the top of the list. Get him down here for one of these barbecue events on the first or second day out, June 1st or June 2nd. I don't need a commitment from him right now, but definitely pushing towards that. And I think I've seen people, especially about wide receivers down here, saying you would maybe not rather be their first commitment, maybe be their third, because that's the one that they're actually going to sign with. Along those lines with Nigel Kelly, I mean, if he wants to play the game because he's big enough to be an SEC recruit, so if you want to try to play that game and everything, and hey, maybe you want to go to one of those schools, cool, but I don't need a commitment right now from him, but definitely pushing towards that. So thanks, Florida State. Appreciate it.
There it is. We got D jumping on the line, and want to remind everyone before you get settled, hit the like button. Before you get settled, let people out on social media know that we're here right now. I just sent out a tweet, as I customarily do, typically a half hour before the show, but I just sent one out to let everyone know, hey, Cam's here. We're talking Canes. Get on in, and you can help us out by retweeting from one of us week to week, or just send out a tweet. Again, people follow you on Twitter and Facebook and social media that have no connection to either one of us. Don't know we're here talking college football every day, and specifically Miami here with Cam. All right. D, hearkening back to a few years ago with Sony Michel and DeAndre Swift at Georgia, saying Miami's running game should be like the 18 Georgia Bulldogs, where we've got a number of backs.
Yeah. And of course, that's going to have me go over to college football stats, cfbstats.com. I'm going to look up the carry allocations for that season really quickly. All right. So you had DeAndre Swift at 163, Elijah Holyfield at 59, 159, and then Brian Herring at 50. The first two guys had 1,000 yards each. Okay. I think that Red Lashley wants to have it me a little bit more instead of 50-50-ish, maybe be 60-40, 70-30 with, one guy getting the majority and then splitting up the rest. And I think that actually fits well with what guys have shown. People are talking about Cam Harris, when he's able to go 100%, because sometimes he doesn't go all 100%, it doesn't seem like. But who's able to come in and really just run like their hair's on fire? The backup. I don't need to, you're coming out of the bullpen. You know what I mean? This is why we have all these guys in the majors now throwing 100 miles an hour, because I'm out of the bullpen. I'm throwing all the gas I have, because my tank is still full, but I'm going to use it all up in one inning, as opposed to a starter trying to stretch it out for 8 or 9. You're not going to throw 100% for 9 innings. That's just ridiculous to consider. But same thing with running backs. Hey, if you got to, if you're going to get 25 carries, okay, maybe I don't go super duper hard on this, one cut or this one thing, because I know I've got to set it up for later. I'm trying to get in this groove. But if you're the backup, look, you get 5-7 carries a game, I'm breakneck speed at that, those carries. Jalen Knighton, same thing. There's that video of him running the drill next to or after Cam Harris in the spring, and it just looked different. Cam Harris, okay, I'm going through Jalen Knighton, I'm doing all these cuts at 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, maybe let those guys come off the bench. I still think that Donald Chaney Jr. should be the starting running back. I think he's just a differently talented kind of a guy. We'll see, obviously, how he recovers from his shoulder injury, which kept him out of the end of spring practice. So that second scrimmage in the spring game, he did not participate in, and was noted by Manny Diaz, as relayed by many of the journalists who were on that availability, that Donald Chaney Jr. should be available going towards the opener. So you're looking at a couple months recovery time. And that's, sometimes guys get dinged up and things like that. I still think his talent is of the starter. But yeah, if it were to be 50-50, like the 18 Georgia Bulldogs are close to 50-50, then you could have two guys who get close to 1,000 yards running. But regardless of the allocation of carries, I think that all three running backs, Chaney Jr., Knighton, and Harris, all bring different things to the table. I think you can scheme them all to be dynamic and challenging for the opposing defense.
D brought up the 2018 Georgia Bulldogs. What came to mind for me was not being able to differentiate necessarily the years, but the tandems was, I thought, of DeAndre Swift and Sony Michel together. But Sony Michel in 18 had already moved on to the NFL. You mentioned Elijah Holyfield and running down the carry distribution. You want to go to the previous year, it was really sick because you had Nick Chubb in the mix at 223, Sony Michel at 156, DeAndre Swift. So you had Chubb, Michel, and Swift in the same backfield. Brian Herrien.
Exactly. And Holyfield and Herrien. All those guys had more than 50 carries. And then you had Jake from State Farm with 55 carries, or whatever. Because unfortunately, they count carries as rushes, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, you had all those guys. So you get something like that. I don't know who would be, if you have somebody at 220 and somebody at 150, I don't know who the 80 back would be in terms of carries. Probably Knighton because of his size. But yeah, I don't know. But there's talent. And then, hey, we haven't even talked about Thaddeus Franklin and Cody Brown, two true freshmen who are both 6 feet tall and more than 220 pounds. I think that Franklin was at 228 and Brown was at 231 coming into this backfield as well. So you got other power backs coming in, to take up some carries maybe. And I don't know exactly what they're going to do with eligibility, whether there's going to be, I don't know. We're going to see how roster management works out going forward. But there's three guys that we know in that backfield, and there's another two guys who are coming who are damn good themselves. So yeah, but that I'll go, the knee bone is connected to the backbone. So, hey, the running game can be good if the offensive line continues to take a step forward. Our quarterback play continues to be to the level that we've seen and things like that. So, the wide receivers catch passes and things which we did see some in the spring game. We also saw some drops from the usual suspects, and things like that. So, I mean, it all kind of goes together and, we'll see. But yeah, I think that Lashley wants one guy to take 65, 70% of the carries because he said that that's what he wants and then go from there.
So that's nursing the distribution of carries and the utilization of the backs. Then there's nursing injuries. And so with Donald Chaney being in the condition that he is, how much do you think that's going to affect, based on the diagnosis, he should be back before the season, but have enough leeway and lead time to get himself sharp and ready to go? Yeah,
and we'll see. Obviously, going up against a team that's as physical as Alabama, they're just massive guys, a shoulder injury, like that's going to be around, you're going to get tackled in the upper body area, so and that's something to watch for just against, you're going up against some of the most dynamic and large athletes that you're going to face this season. So there's that. And I mean, yeah, Chaney might not start at the beginning of the year, but Miami is good for changing the starting lineup and taking somebody who was not starting at the beginning and eventually starting them. Hello, Gregory Rousseau. You know what I mean? When everybody was just like, this guy needs to start. And, I'm not even going to say the name of the player who was in front of him because I like that player. I interviewed that player a couple of times. He's since left for the Mountain West time zone, that conference. You know what I'm talking about? It was not his fault, Colorado State. It was not his fault that the coaches started him in front of Russo, but everybody was screaming at the player. And honestly, was doing a fine job. He's doing okay. But you got this superstar over here on the bench who comes in and he has a sack in the third play, and then another pressure on play 4 and another batted pass because he's in the backfield on play 5. It's pretty clear to see. So, even if Donald Chaney Jr., again, who I believe is just a different kind of running back than the other two and should be starting, even if he does not start at the beginning of the year, I do believe that there's a space for him to climb up that depth chart through the course of the season.
If I'm thinking of the right player on a late Saturday night in the fall, if you're watching one of those late Mountain West games, you could find him on ESPN, correct? Is that the guy? SP.
Yes.
All right.
That was even over. Yes.
I threw that in there.
SPN.
Yes.
No, you are correct. You are. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Nicely done.
Shane. Man, we're getting all sorts of requests for just people wanting to see you and other media guests that we have on here. Just mix it up. So this is a different request of a big conglomeration of Miami talk prior to the Alabama game. Yes, we'll try to throw something together, Shane. I don't know if we would have time for all those people to even take a breath and say anything. That's a little heavy on the invitation list.
That's like, I'm playing Outriders on my PS4 right now as I wait to get a PS5. But that's a cross-play crew right there. You want from different platforms, you want from different organizations and outlets. Like that's a lot. That's a lot. It would be fun. I don't know, how, just like Inside Baseball, I don't know exactly how we could structure it so everybody would have a chance to speak. Or, just even interact with that many people. But I mean, it could be interesting. But this is why, I appreciate you guys watching and reading State of the U and everything like that. But we're not the only outlet out there. And I urge you to follow some of these others, listen to, watch, read their things as well. Because, I love what I do. And I'm very confident in the content that I create and everything out there. But I'm not the only one. So, hey, go check some of these other guys out. If we're not able to bring every single content creator under the sun together in one stream, you can still support them, because we should be able to support everybody and not have, beefs like I've seen on my Twitter mentions, which is crazy. But
D-Rock Irish, even Notre Dame fans taking part, and welcome here in the live chat. As it was commented a few times to me this week in various ways, it's a bit of a different experience here at the Voice of College Football, because typically if you're going to check out a Miami live stream or a Notre Dame live stream or a Florida State live stream, like 95+% of the people in the live chat are fans of those particular teams, and is a very centric discussion, whereas we've got this smorgasbord of fan bases that come in. Even during the Miami live stream, that's probably even more Canes-centric than the other teams. It's still fans from all over the place. So D-Rock Irish wondering our thoughts about the overtime rules changing in 2022. So basically, to explain to everyone, the overtime rules through the years, starting in 1997, when overtime became a thing in college football and no more tie games, is that, of course, what the setup is from the 25-yard line with no special teams. And then it's been tweaked in recent years in regards to trying to end the game as soon as possible, because the players are being physically taken to the limit. And anytime I see a rule change like this, Cam, of course, there's the part in me that wants to create the best and most valid, most credible rules for the reverence to the game, or the credibility of the game and the result, versus they're not robots. Their flesh and blood needs to be taken into consideration, and their limitations as players physically, and that's what's being taken into consideration here, which is, I believe, having not looked at the rule for a while, it's after the third overtime, second overtime. So I'll let you take it from there, because you're obviously.
Yeah, no, I just saw it. It just moves it up. So, this is basically because there was that one Arkansas, LSU, or Mississippi State or whatever game.
LSU, Texas A&M 2 years ago. 74-72.
But that wasn't the only one. I was thinking
there were
one.
Yes.
That went to 7 overtimes. But you've had these games that are like literally
Kentucky.
Almost double the number of snaps from regulation into overtime. When you get to 7 overtimes, you're going, you have penalties, extending drives, things like that. So there's that, and then there was one, recently, like Mark mentioned. But basically, it's changing. You got to go for 2, starting in the second overtime. I want to say now this moved up from the third, and then once you get into like the third or fourth overtime, now it's alternating 2-point plays. That's it. Like, not from the 25 in anymore. It's 25 in for overtime 1 and 2. If you score a touchdown in overtime 2, you got to go for 2. After that, it's opposing 2-point plays Until the end. So I don't like it, and I just don't like it, I don't really have anything other than I don't see the reasoning why, because you don't have this many games that are going super duper 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 overtime, right? And if you then have moved up when teams have to go for 2, I think that would have taken care of a lot of these extended games. But again, you're talking a literal handful a year. So you have this little bit of little thing that you have to, or you want to change, and you have this huge rule change then. You know what I mean? It's like, I just don't, it doesn't vibe to me, but whatever. I'm still going to watch it. I just hope that my team wins in regulation, so we don't even got to have this conversation.
No, it's a good point that you make. So if we do the math, we've got 130 teams in the FBS. They play 12 regular season games. So that's roughly 65 times 12. It's roughly about 800 college football games in a season, something like that.
Give or take.
And you see this happen where there's some ridiculous, egregious number of overtimes being played 3 times maybe a season out of 800 games, maybe, where somebody plays 4 or 5 overtimes. It's usually, it hits 2 or 3. You'll see some 2 and 3 overtimes every couple weeks, but nothing past that. It's very rare.
Except for like the 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah, so yeah, the integrity of the game is somewhat compromised at that. It becomes this contrived situation. It's one of the reasons why I don't like that for whether you say take baseball into consideration or softball, baseball in particular, that we're going to put a runner on second base during extra innings because, and that's what they did in the major leagues last year during extra innings. We're putting, well, where did my first thought is, where did that runner come from? Well, they didn't come from anything. You contrived a situation that doesn't exist.
I think they're still doing that. And then,
are they really?
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's to me, like when I was growing up playing baseball, that's playing Catholic League rules. We played Catholic League in Michigan, was every batter starts with a 1-and-1 count. And that's to speed up the game and get the pitch numbers down and everything like that. But you take a first pitch fastball in Catholic League ball, you're down 1-2 all of a sudden, and the leverage of that at bat has completely changed. It's like, yeah, you step up, and then all of a sudden there's a runner on second. It's just like, for what? Now, last year, because you needed to play these games because you needed this television money and you wanted to have a season during the pandemic, even with people not there, because you have these contracts and everything, and you need to get some games on the field for financial reasons. I get it. And then, okay, cool. You're not going to have as much of a spring training. You are concerned about the arms and everything. So now we're going to do something to speed these games up. We're going to have a runner on second. We're going to play 7-inning doubleheaders, which they're still doing, things like that. Okay, I don't like it, but at least I understood it. This with college football, I neither like nor understand the logical foundation for it. But hey.
Overtime in and of itself, the way it was comprised for college football, I thought was more fair than the NFL, because back when the NFL first started overtime, going way, way back, it was first score, sudden death, which is totally unfair. And then they've revised it. We won't go into that since then. Right. So I at least thought that college football was fair because it gave equal opportunity to both sides. What I didn't like was you are eliminating most of special teams. So again, you're contriving a situation where you're placing the ball at the 25-yard line. Mm-hmm. So you've eliminated most special teams, which is a third of the game roughly, but you have accentuated or emphasized the value of the field goal kicker suddenly, because how many teams, especially going back 25 years when offenses weren't as prolific, would bog down at the 25-yard line, and a 42-yard field goal, it was pretty substantial, even more so then than it is now, to where, oh, we got a good field goal kicker.
Yeah, I mean, and there's the thing. You see that, teams have been very successful leveraging special teams. Miami in the, 90s and 2000s, Virginia Tech famously putting all of their starters on specials and then blocking and returning, kicks and punts for touchdowns, blocking field goal attempts and punts for touchdowns, things like that. You use that as a weapon, but then you mitigate that by taking away 80% of the unit, or the interaction, that's a third of the game. So, I mean, it's just like it changes a lot. But, I don't necessarily like the overtime rules. But, again, the only time that we really seen Miami get into overtimes recently was snatching, barely, almost defeat from the hands of victory in 2015 against Nebraska at Hard Rock that year, that we were up big and then let that team with the quarterback number 4 who could not even throw the ball come back and you know what I mean? Like, other than that, Tommy Armstrong, exactly. And then we scored in overtime. Corn Elder had an interception in overtime when they had the ball back. Cool, we win. But other than that, it's not like Miami is leveraging overtime in such a way where this is going to be a key component of the season. And now save this video, because watch me say this, and Miami play 4 overtime games this year or next year when the rule goes into effect in 2022. Watch that happen.
Shane back in here. Question for Cam. How do you feel about the bandwagon recruiting that plagues college football? What I mean is that while Miami has not been good in nearly 20 years, we've been losing top dogs to Bama, Clemson, Georgia. Are you following that bandwagon recruiting?
Yeah, top guys want to play with top guys. You know what I mean? Winners want to be with winners. It is what it is. And with, again, the proliferation of digital film, for one, and then just the world getting smaller with the internet and telephones and FaceTime and, things like that, going far away from home is not as far as it used to be. You know what I mean? When I made the choice to come to Miami from Michigan in 2000, I made the decision, whatever the last decision day is, was it May the 1st? April? Something, whatever day it was that you had to decide to go to college. That's the day I decided, because I stayed on the phone and I skipped 4 classes because I was trying to get Vanderbilt to give me a couple extra scholarship dollars. And they said my mom made too much money, which is first world problems and, a blessing. But I wasn't able to bridge that gap financially. So then I said, I'm going to go to Miami, another private school, which was not cheap, but I had more scholarships there. Whatever. But when I made the choice to come to South Florida from Detroit, the world, it was getting smaller, but it was still a larger distance. Now you have all these, and if you're talking about sports, right? All these games are on somebody's network, for one. You know what I mean? So you got streaming through the site or through the schools. You have all these conference networks. You have all these satellite packages and things where you can get it on ESPN Plus, another subscription service. You can go out to your local bar or grill that has whatever, 73 screens on, and you can find your game. So even if you're not home, you can still be seen by your people. Would it be easier if Leonard Taylor from Miami, mom's from Miami, goes to Miami, she can drive to the stadium as opposed to watching on television? Is that preferable for a lot of people? Yes, but the world is so small now that even if you're talking about Pac-10 after dark, Pac-12, after dark. I've been playing college hoops 2K8 where it was still Pac-10 conference. I apologize. But Pac-12 after dark, you can still see all those games, is my point. So all those things make the world smaller, and then you want to win, right? You want to win, and you want to get to the NFL. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU have been winning, and they've been putting buku guys in the NFL year after year, truckload after truckload of high-level NFL draft picks. Now, some of them are not necessarily as successful at the next level as guys who went to Miami, but whatever. But if you're going to look at those things for being at the top of the list of choices or decision factors for these kids, it makes sense that they would go there. So is there some bandwagon recruiting? The best want to be with the best. Yes. So it is a tougher sell because the world is smaller because of digital film and, increased technology around and the proliferation of just all these television games and things like that. So if you go Tyreek Stevenson to Georgia, it's not as far away as it once was. And then he came home, but whatever. So yeah, you're going to have that. And then, you don't want to be around a losing program. Miami did get some really good talent when Al Golden was here, but it got tough after a while because some of these top guys openly said, I was going to go to Miami except for, and there's people that I know personally. There's players who have said it, many players that, oh yeah, Travaris Robinson, the new DB's coach, he himself personally said that was an option for me, and I decided that I wasn't going to do that because of shabba dabba 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 da. He himself personally has that same story. So it makes sense. I don't like it. This is what we're talking about, Miami needing to get more of the top guys that they're looking for from the local area to stay, which is a slow process that is ongoing. But the bandwagon recruiting of all the best guys wanting to play with the best guys so that they can win and have the best development towards getting to the NFL, unfortunately, it makes sense. And it's incumbent then upon the programs, all these programs, to do better on the field, to then have that kind of product that kids want to buy into, whether it's Miami, whether it's North Carolina, which is having a recruiting renaissance with Mac Brown, whether it's Michigan, who's still recruiting to an elite level, even though they're performing like dog crap, if it's Minnesota, if it's UCLA trying to turn things around, USC trying to turn things around, Arizona State trying to take a step up, Tennessee trying to rebuild, Texas trying to rebuild. It does not matter. If it's one of those teams who's not one of those top teams, you have to sell something. And also with the selling of it, you have to have that last thing from the recruiting rules. Proof positive on the field of concept is wins. And whether that goes from 4 to 7 and 7 to 9 is the proof of your concept going forward, you have to have that. Otherwise, you're going to have this arms race. And then, that's not even talking about, Stephen Godfrey's seminal piece of Meet the Bagman, because bagmen exist. Trust and believe.
Falcon ERX, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate that and your contribution to the show and to the channel. And also we've got Mike Williams. Thank you, Mike. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Go Canes. All right. Saw a few shots in the live chat at Gervin Hall and Amari Carter. Is there any particular reason based on what transpired in the last month or at the spring game?
Spring game. I think that Gervin Hall played okay. I think that there were, a couple plays that showed room for growth. But overall, I think he had a solid game. It's really just the fact that Avante Williams needs to start. He came in there with his hair on fire. He's covering all this ground. He's playing physically. He had like 5 tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 pass breakups, almost 3. He was Avante Williams started with the number 1 defense and looked like the best player on the number 1 defense. As a super true freshman who missed last year because of an undisclosed health thing, and he's coming back. And he just looks like the truth. Number 2 safety in his recruiting class a couple years ago. He has the side speed, instincts, physical ability. His Twitter I don't know if he's still on Twitter, but in high school it was Slow Down Boy 7. Because he's that kind of fast. Like, he would do the game. Go back to the last comment. I didn't read it. I want to see it real quick. In punt returns, when he was at DeLand, he would let the ball trickle. Don't know. Yes, I believe that Miami has the inside track on Nigel Kelly, but we'll see about that moving forward, Jordan. But he would let the ball roll like a ground ball, and guys would be around him on the field. And he would pick the ball up and get loose. This is I don't know what he ran in the 100, but I think you're like a 10-7, 10-6 kind of guy in the 100 for Avante Williams. Like, this is a guy with incredible speed. Go look up his highlights from high school. I think I'm playing Slow Down Boy 7. I'm telling you. But he has all of that, and then he showed on the field with the number 1 defense that kind of performance. That's going to be at the exclusion of Gervin Hall or Amari Carter, because Bubba Bolden's going to come back and he's going to start. So, I might have to go with the growing pains of having 15 out there starting in the secondary because Avante Williams is the new number 15, taking over after Jalen Phillips, taking over after Gregory Rousseau. He just looked like the God's honest truth. So with that, on the flip side is these other 2 guys are not the truth. And we see this freshman who is the truth. So we're going to talk bad about the guys who are not the truth, while having that uplift the guy who we believe to be the truth. So I think that's why some of the shots are being thrown at Gervin Hall and Amari Carter. Who needs to move down to the second level, whether it's striker or linebacker. I just think that he'd be more effective as a player at that level.
And Jordan, keep in mind that Cam gave a full rundown of Nigel Kelly's profile and so forth. So that was at the beginning of the hour. Just check it out when the video posts. Again, Mike Williams, Falcon ERX, thank you so much for the super chats. Wholesome One, Cam, what's up?
Yo.
Can you give us a breakdown, position by position, on how many we should bring in and why, based on the future schedules and draft picks?
Give me a second. Yep. Already did it. Bang. This is me getting caught up with recruiting coverage. So a while ago, this is March 23rd, so exactly a month ago. Well, yeah, exactly a month ago then. If you search up on State of the U, you can just Google it, State of the U, numbers and needs for 2022. I did that very thing. I do it to set up every single recruiting class, my view from the top. Now, I think that I'm going to change a couple of these numbers, but I'm quoting myself. I'm literally I'm talking to my camera, but I'm on a different tab on my browser looking at the article. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom because I gave narrative for every single one. But at the end of the day, the too long didn't read section, class numbers that I think is going to be 1 for quarterback, because you've got to have one every year. That's recruiting rule number 1. You already know. 1 for running back, 2 for wide receiver, 1+ for tight end, 4 for offensive line, 4 defensive linemen, 2 ends, 2 tackles, 2 linebackers, 2 corners, 2 safeties. Anything else is going to be best available. I think that I'm going to drop the running back from this class because I think that we can get by with who we have, and I think that almost at least 4 of the 5 are going to return next year. So you're going to take that, probably put it towards a punter, because Lewis Headley's already 27 or 28 and playing very, very well. He's runner up for the Ray Guy Award for the best punter in the country. And so he's probably going to move on to the NFL. And coaches have already hinted at the fact of, if you liked what you saw from Jose Borregales at this pro day, be sure you come back next pro day for our 6'4" yoked and tatted punter. So that kind of was the thing that got me there, because I wasn't sure if you wanted to stay for all 4. So you're probably going to flip that. You could maybe fudge the numbers a little bit on a couple of the others slots or positions down the line. Regardless of the quarterback situation, I'm always going to say that you need to take 1, period. That's just foundational belief, is recruiting rule number 1. If you haven't read the recruiting rules, it's still pinned on the front page of the State of the U website. One of the best pieces I've ever written, so go check that out. The only other thing is, I intentionally have fewer than the full 24 scholarships there, because we had to have one that counted forward, because we had only 25 incoming counters last year. So Cody Brown ends up being 1 for 2022, even though he's a 2021 signee. Whatever, numbers game. There's 24 kids we can bring in. I intentionally put less or fewer than that because transfer portal. Excuse me. So that's something that Miami has leveraged to great success to bridge gaps in the roster, whether it's going to be for the 2021 season or 2022. I do not think that's going to change. And as the transfers continue to get drafted highly and perform well, I think that we're going to see Miami be a number 1 top tier destination for the top level talent from the transfer portal. So I think the numbers worked out to maybe 19 that I said from there. Then that gives us 5 spots to get to the 24 incoming counters we have for this season. I leave those open because, hey, maybe we take all 5, maybe we take 3, and then we bump up to 2 other prep kids or high school kids from that level of recruiting as well. So that's up on the website as well. I gave narratives for all of the positions, at least as I saw it. I wrote it a month ago. I got to do a new class breakdown update. Not much to really break down at this moment, because Ja'Cory Brown's the only kid in the class, but that's kind of how I see it. And again, leaving the intentional growth room for either additional high school kids or preferably, well, not I would say preferably, but more likely kids from the transfer portal also built into the number, because it's foreseeable that they would still have transfers coming here, and you have to have a scholarship slot open for that to happen.
Folks, keep a few things in mind. We just got another super chat coming in, so we'll acknowledge that in just a second. So Cam donates his time each and every week to us. He runs a major Miami football website that he just alluded to. So just like I benefit from the views that you give us, and I'll let you know that, hey, if you're a Miami fan and you're just here for the Miami content, I love that. That helps me considerably. If you're just a college football junkie, I released a Texas video today. I got Arkansas tomorrow, all sorts of teams. So dive in. The views help me in a similar way. Cam gives us a slice here and gives us his personality and so forth. But the take that you get on State of the U is from a variety of writers and contributors, as well as Cam. And so the clicks help their site as well in a similar way as views. So head on over there, check out the material, make that a part of your Miami Hurricanes intake on a regular basis. Also, similar to the super chats coming in, just keep in mind, again, if that's not something you can do, don't feel bad about it. Just continue to contribute and support us in other ways. But if you can, then our channel and this show in particular succeed based on your contributions. All right. So I don't know if you can really take this one on. It's quite speculative, not talking about who you could gain through the transfer portal, but guys, obviously, once they get through, not just at Miami, but schools across the country, kind of assess where they stand after spring practice. Hey, I thought I was in a better place on the depth chart a month ago, and maybe I'm not. Maybe I need to look elsewhere. So we got William asking about who could possibly transfer out this summer.
I would say, without calling names, because everybody has their favorites and least favorites, I would say look at the positions with the greatest numbers on the roster, because with great numbers means more traffic to get to the front. So I would say, maybe a wide receiver, maybe offensive line. In the past, we've had offensive linemen who came in as, blue chip recruits and shuttled on elsewhere because they figured out, hey, like, I don't have a seat. I don't have a spot. If we're talking about this 2 deep, and they're talking about all these guys and my name's not listed and I'm with the scout team again for a 4th year in a row, maybe you look that way. Defensive line, I think that there's just a lot of talent. I think that there's young guys who can step up. I think that, bro, you're an Arkansas fan. Shut up. Who'd y'all lose to last year? Who's the small school that beat Arkansas and beat them to death?
Well, nobody last year because they only played an SEC schedule.
The year before.
But who have they lost to? I'll give you a list in just like the last 3 or 4 years. They've lost to Colorado State. They've lost to North Texas. They've lost to Western Kentucky.
No. Western Kentucky. That's the one, because they just scored again on Chad Morris.
They've lost to all those teams.
No, but I mean, yeah, they lost a couple of those. Western Kentucky ran the score up in Fayetteville on these guys. Shut up.
Yeah, it was like 45-16 or something.
Yeah, it was like 28-3 at the half. It was like 53-12.
They lost to Toledo a few years before that.
Come on, man. Come on. Miss me with all of that. So, whatever.
Yeah.
I hope that you enjoyed Alex Collins, because that's the only time they're going to beat Miami ever in the history of life. Shut up. As I was saying, sorry, back to the question at hand. You're going to look, offensive line, wide receiver might be somewhere where a guy on the roster could look to seek shelter elsewhere. Depending on how they feel about things, maybe linebacker, on how those things shake out. I don't really think that there's anywhere else that is I would say maybe those 3 positions, probably in that order, would be the ones that I would look at to have maybe somebody, if that was going to have a position that has someone leave, it would be probably among those 3. Anything other than that, at this time, anything other than those 3 positions would be a surprise to me. And as Eddie put on the screen, I'm not going to say the names. You see it. I'm going to go down the positions really quickly. Wide receiver, offensive line. Just say it.
All right, Talking Canes with all of you. Every Thursday typically is our time with Cam. And again, check out his work and everybody else. I was just on State of the U today, and I was, I don't say I was surprised, but I noticed that they're, like, every article I looked at across the board in all the sports, and then down beyond I'm sure there are newspaper type terms that I could be using, all the pictured articles, and then the list of articles down below. But the number of contributors I was impressed with.
Well, I do try to have a robust contributing group, because, I like to just give people a chance to have a voice, because, it was at a time that someone once gave me that opportunity. And, I am blessed and highly favored to say that a lot of guys who have come through State of the U are either still there doing great work or have gone on to full-time jobs in media. I know in the previous tweet about, that super group and everything, Gabby Arudia, most recently now with 247 and everything. We gave him his start at State of the U, and he had applied and tried to be a content creator for a couple other websites and didn't get that opportunity. And I saw potential in him and brought him on and helped develop him. And he's gone and he's passed me and developing even further every day. And we still talk and hang out. I went out to lunch with him and Marsh Thomas a while back and everything. But giving that opportunity, it's still like teaching to me. And I love doing that. So, that's something. So, having a larger group than most is a thing that I do intentionally. And I think that it comes through in our work. So, yeah.
Falcon ERX, thank you so much for another super chat here. Appreciate that so much. Our guy Falcon ERX. Mark is the voice of college football. Cam is the voice. Period. Keep splitting your knowledge, in that Isaac Hayes voice. Yes.
No, that's high praise, man. I appreciate that. So, claim to fame for me. It's just I've had this voice since I was like 10. My voice changed overnight one night. Literally, the summer before, fourth grade, fifth grade, something like that. Went to bed on a Tuesday night. I had a sleepover at my summer camp on Wednesday, and I remember that greatly. So I came downstairs and everything, and I was yay high. My mother was at the stove facing away from me. Oh, hey, Cam, good morning. What do you want for breakfast before camp? You ready for your thing? And in this voice, at 10, said pancakes, and she about jumped out of her. I was like, what? I said I wanted some pancakes. She's like, oh my God, I thought it was a grown man. I was just like, and like literally, I didn't have all the voice cracks or the longitudinal growth. I never had, literally, I went to bed the previous night because I've always been a singer. I've always loved music and everything. I was singing Mariah Carey up there, like all that, literally. Went to bed, woke up and had this voice. But I'm gracious and humbled by the compliments and everything. And if you enjoy it, if you don't, well, sorry. But for the majority of my life, I've had this very voice. So, yeah.
That's great. Wow. I was going to say she might have thought that maybe you had a sore throat or a cold. And
no, because it wasn't even like nasally, or it was just clear as day like this. Like when I went to band camp for the first summer, I was a piano major, piano right here, mine. And I had to pick up an extra class. Long story short, that's how I got into choir and fell in love with it. But my voice was too low for the group or the age group that I was in. So they put me into the next group up, and I was singing real low notes at this young age. And I'm like, how is this kid at this age doing it? But yeah, they put me like in the top group then and put me in magic. It was like all kinds of stuff. So that accelerated that path. But no, it was just overnight, literally.
Nothing's coming to mind for me. Nothing in the live chat. One thing does come to mind, and I think this is a stupid idea, and I wouldn't bring it up otherwise if we were flowing along with some other conversation or if there were a ton of questions in the chat. But ESPN ran something in the last couple of days, and from time to time, especially to confront this elite age that we're in college football, these 3 or 4 schools ruling things, whether college football should go to some kind of mega conference, super conference, and gather up the 16 best schools and have them all play separate football from everybody else. I think that's an insane and inane idea myself.
Well, I mean, we've seen in the world of football, soccer,
yes,
they had that for 18 hours, the Super League. Like they announced it the one day, and then by noon the next day, it was pretty much gone. Everybody's withdrawn. They're going to get penalty. I don't understand how you can get penalties for saying that you're going to do something but not actually doing it. But hey, whatever. But yeah, I think that maybe if you did it as a World Cup kind of thing, where you said, okay, once every 4 years, we're going to have a 16-team tournament or something. You know what I mean? Maybe you could do that. Excuse me, but like a continual and like separate Super League or whatever. I just don't think that that's yeah, I agree with you. It's insane and inane. I just don't think that would be wise. I saw a lot of people, obviously, in the world of college football, saw that from soccer, immediately created their content, whether it be a post, an article, a podcast, things like that, with their super groups for college football. I found it interesting that Miami was in none of them. I don't necessarily disagree based upon if you're talking about just like fame and money, or like conceit, if you will, of the program and the fan base. Because I look at Michigan as a conceited program. You know what I mean? And look, I'm from Michigan. I love the University of Michigan. They're my number 2 behind Miami because I bleed orange and green. But the last time they won a college football championship, I was in high school. I'm about to celebrate. Well, I'm actually already 20 years out of high school. So you're talking more than 20 years ago now. It was back in the previous millennia that happened. But so if you're talking about like program hubris and financial support, whether that be of the program or of the boosters or groups surrounding, I understand not having Miami. If you're talking about hubris of the program or like the conceit or the self-importance of the program, I would maybe debate that, because Miami, I think we have a healthy impression of ourselves as a program, and as well we should with our championship history. I know that history is getting a little bit longer, further in the rearview mirror every year. But the other part of that is like, I don't understand it because of those two things, or I do understand it because of those two things, and I don't understand it because if you're using those things and then having programs like Nebraska in your super conference or your hypothetical super conference, how does that work? You know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think that that's something for college, because college football is so regional, and they're like,
exactly.
And I get with everything in digital technology, with the world getting smaller, that you can see more games from other regions, but it is fiercely local, fiercely regional.
Yes.
And to change that into making it national is just not at the heart of what college football is.
Exactly.
To me.
That's point number 1 for me, is you're tearing away the fabric of the sport.
Yeah.
You're losing. Okay. Yeah, we could go through a zillion examples. I know nothing about football. So is 16 typically the number that everyone's taking from that model?
Yeah, because it's just simple for the tiering
for
of
a tournament. Sure.
For a tournament. Yeah, exactly. So, because you're going to do, pair them off. It's just like Champions League, which I think has 16. If it doesn't, it has 8. But you do home and away, play. And then there's a winner and a loser. And then you go forward, and it's just straight, tournament setup, where it's binary. So, binary times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, times 4 is times 2 is 8. And that's how you get a 64 team tournament, just because you keep expanding it binarily. But yeah, 16, that seems to be just the right number if you're going to do something like that. And then it also breaks down to a good 8 and 8 if you're going to do divisions of that. But then that would just be recreating what we already have in college football with 2 divisions. You get the champions of those divisions, and then you go forward from that.
I've heard it described in a larger format, just not a tournament, but a complete season, and not going with 16, going with more like 64, with this thought process that, and then you would have a great debate over who's going to determine what the criteria is. Is it the best 64 records, or 32 or 16 over the last 3 seasons or 4 seasons? And then to put those, isn't an SEC record of 6-6 more credible than a Pac-12 record of 6-6, and did on and on and on?
Or is it more credible than a Pac-10 or Pac-12 record of 8-4?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So yeah, there's all those kind of things that go with it.
And then, as I understand it, as this plays out, then everybody else goes and plays football as well. And then after, let's say, each season, there's some type of review to say, well, Illinois barely made our cut, and then they went 1-11, so they're gone. Let's bring up Memphis and let them play in the big boy league next year. Or there's some type of churn or exchange of teams based on how well they play or don't play well in their
you're just getting to,
it's
soccer
ridiculous
with promotion and relegation. And there's been many an article. Bill Connolly, formerly of SB Nation, now at ESPN, wrote, and he's a big avid soccer fan as well. And he's been writing about college football promotion and relegation for years. I mean, he's been at ESPN for 3 years now? He did that article for 5 or 6 years with SB Nation before making that transition. So for the better part of a decade, he's been talking about college football promotion and relegation based upon who won or came in second. And you can see the whole thing and like playing it out over time of, okay, like who does well and who goes up and like regionalizing, what the or actually it's just using the conferences that exist and saying what's a, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then promoting and relegating based upon their performance down the line. So, I mean, if you're going that route, that's really what you're looking at, because you won't just have the one. You'll have the one at the top and the other ones that feed that or something else. So you're looking at promotion and relegation, which, hey, if you're a college football fan and you're not big into football, the soccer, you can look at that. I know that there's been some other people. I don't remember which one. I think it was like Dan Wolkin or it wasn't Bruce Feldman. Maybe it was Andy Staples as well. There's been a couple other national writers, journalists who have talked about a promotion relegation kind of a thing in college football. So if this is a new conversation to you, maybe go and look up some of those old pieces, because these gentlemen have laid it out incredibly well what their logical foundation for it would be. I'm not saying that we would be going that way. I'm not saying that this is an impending thing. However, with a super conference or anything like that, and then the embedded conversation like Mark talked about who would go in and who would come out, that is promotion relegation. And there's other people who have studied it and talked about it in the world of college football way longer than the last 4 minutes that I've talked about it. So if interested, I would say urge you to go and Google those, look those up and read them.
Matt's going to make a debate here between the two of us. Good evening, guys. Wanted to know if Cam agrees with your assessment that Miami only has a 55% chance. It was 58%. Sorry if I'm off a bit. Chance of beating Florida State this year.
Absolutely not. That's incredibly low. That's ridiculously low. That's asinine. That there's only a lower than 3 and 5, just under, but about a 3 and 5 chance. So, I mean, at a 58%, or we're going to round it up to 60 for the ease of math. So 3 out of 5 is 60%. So we're saying if you played these teams together 5 times, Florida State would win 2 of those 5? Absolutely not. No.
They're playing all the games in Tallahassee, correct? No,
if you played these, the game as it's slated to be, if you played that game 5 times, Florida State would win 2 of those this year? No.
They all have to be played at Florida State. Yeah, and? I took that into consideration.
I disagree there. I need, for me, it would be, they would have a 1 in 5 chance, if that. And I mean, that's being generous. And that's really just basing it off of the 5. I won't say 0 out of 5. But if we're going out of 5, in that kind of a thing, and I know that I said that because I rounded it up to 60. But no, it's way closer than 1 to 5. 1 out of 5, maybe lower than that, than 2 out of 5. No way. No. With the way their team is tiny. They got one quarterback who can run and can't throw. They got one who is a dual threat who almost had his leg ripped off and had to get amputated after it's shattered. And now he's supposed to be moving around. And we got all these dogs on defense. And you can throw well. Look, Mackenzie Milton, if you watch some of that spring game, he had them couple throws back to back with a little bit of time. He can spin it. So you got one who can throw it and cannot run like he used to, which was a big part of his success. And you got one who can run and not throw. And then you got these other kids who, and I'm going to be very honest with you, Miami alum, like I think it's somewhere here on my table. I have my pocket diploma. I have to pull it out for y'all one day because it says Cameron James Underwood, a Bachelor of Music degree from the School of Music from it's the University of Miami. Because I went there and I graduated. So you know what side of this debate I'm on. They got at least a couple guys in that quarterback room who do not deserve to be wearing garnet and gold. And if Florida State is Florida State, those guys are not wearing garnet and gold. And if they are, they're damn sure not playing quarterback. You know what I mean? You had an all-state quarterback like Anquan Bolden who could and switched from wide receiver to come back to play quarterback and played well when they needed him to. But he got there, played 2 snaps of the first day of drills at quarterback, and they say, hey, we need the extra pass catcher. Why don't you slide over with the receivers? Never to be seen from again. And this is a guy who can play quarterback at the Florida State level. And you got guys in this quarterback room who, honestly and truly, if you're a Florida State fan and you're watching this, ask yourself, Jordan Travis, if Florida State is Florida State, right, is he playing quarterback? If this is the 11 to 16 window, with Jimbo and championships and all those guys, right? Is Jordan Travis still a quarterback? Because at 5'11 and 213 pounds, moving like he moves, he's at running back, H-back, or wide receiver. You and I both know. And I'm not even going to put him in the early 2000s or the 1990s because you know he's not even on the roster. Chubba Hubbard, wearing garnet and gold as a quarterback at Florida State, he might be one.
Yeah.
Chubba Purdy, sorry. But he might be one of the clipboard holders. You know what I mean? But he's not going to be on the field competing for snaps if you're Florida State and Florida State is actually Florida State. And you know that. And you know I don't even like y'all like that. And you know that's the God's honest truth. You got substandard guys on that roster. And you know how I know that? Because Miami had substandard guys on that roster. And we saw it and we said it. And you saw it and you said it. But we admitted it. And I've called these names. There's plenty of guys who didn't need to play at Miami. Nantambu Kilfentress, A.J. Highsmith, Larry Hope. You know what I mean? Dallas Crawford. Dallas Crawford was a player of the year, his conference in high school. He maybe should have had a smaller role than he had on that roster, but at least he could have worn that jersey. We admitted that kind of stuff. These guys who came here, David Perry, the Bahamian kid who went to U school and he played and then transferred or changed positions a couple times before he left. He's not a Miami player. You know, I guess he was the prototype for Gregory Rousseau that didn't work out because he was 6'6", 205, and they tried to at defensive end and tight end. They couldn't really, develop or unlock that talent. And eventually later you saw that. But there have been guys for the Miami program in the past when Miami was bad who should not have been wearing, orange and green and white. Y'all got plenty of them dudes on that roster who should not be wearing garnet and gold. And you know that. Because if you would go back to 13, 14, 15, 16, and you talk about a bunch of guys on this roster, you'll find that very, very few of them are of the caliber of the standard of what Florida State was and should be. They are not now, and the insanity is trying to convince yourselves and then by extension trying to convince us that these guys are of that caliber. No, they are not. If they were, then y'all wouldn't have lost, 80 million to 3, 52 to 10. We beat y'all by 6 touchdowns. You would have lost by 6 touchdowns if you had all these guys who were Florida State caliber guys. Absolutely not. And it's not hard to see. And at some point, remember Willie Taggart said, you got to embrace the suck. The being in the trenches of that development. Y'all got to embrace that that's where y'all are. Honestly and truly. Miami, we had to in 2015 after Clemson hung 58-0 on us and gave Brad Kaya a concussion on a 2-man rush when Shaq Lawson gave a stutter step between 3 offensive linemen and baptized that man. And after that, we said, look, I knew we were bad. Okay, look, whoa. You had to take a step back. That's, the knowledge, the clear sense of self and where you are. I don't think the Florida State fans have that, for one. And then in the estimation of the question, short story long, bringing it all the way back, saying that this team with those guys who are substandard players, who are not Florida State caliber players, have a 2 in 5 chance of beating Miami this year? This year. No. In future years, I think that they could go in that way. But this year, I think that the gap is still I think the gap between these teams is still massive. Massive.
Okay. I'm working with probabilities and percentages. And I'm also looking at, like the wholesome one there is alluding to, 52 to 10. We could go through all sorts of series across college football and see drastic changes in scores from year to year. Like just because you lost 52 to 10 last year doesn't mean you're going to show up and lose 52 to 10 this year.
But I don't think that they've changed the roster. I don't think that they've changed the scheme. I watched that spring game. I definitely damn sure from the spring see they haven't changed the performance. So maybe in the fall, but and it is one of the things, and I've seen people tweet about it, and I'm going to have to write about it, but Miami returns 19 starters and has like 91 to 93% of the production from last year's team coming back. And then you're going to add on talent through the transfer portal. You're going to add on these guys developing. You're going to have these wide receivers overstepping these other guys. You're going to have, that are on the roster can perform better. Things like that. You got Avonte Williams, who as a super true freshman, whatever, should be starting. So you're going to have the talent that you had, and then you're going to increase it in these areas. And Florida State has what? They added some pieces. They added that nice transfer defensive end. I will admit, he's good. He can play. He can play there. He can play here. He can play anywhere. That's a Florida State caliber player. Past him this year, I don't see it. I mean, Ray 73-37. Any team has a 2 out of 5 minimum chance to beat Miami. I disagree. And particularly in the thing, talking about this Florida State team. Look, and I've been there. I've seen this with my team. Like, this is going to be a slow rebuild for them. Slow, and they're not, because I just don't think that they're infusing the kind of talent that they need. And then they just have such a vast need for upgraded talent. And Mike Norvell, God bless him, he's still recruiting like he's at Memphis. You're going to, the odd random 3-star developmental guy out of Miami, out of Florida State. Cool. I get it. You get a guy who you think that you can unlock the potential, and he might be a little bit better than that everybody else thinks. The random 1 or 2 or 5, okay. When that's the foundation of your entire roster, you're at a G5 school. You know what I mean? You're not at Florida State. You're not at Miami. Gregory Rousseau is the 3-star developmental guy who hits. 1 or 2 of those on the roster, sure. But a whole roster, again, now I'm going to go back and talk about what I talked about before. You had David Perry, who was a 3-star developmental guy, who was 6'6", 205, 210 when he came to college, amounted to nothing, transferred out. You know what I mean? It's just, when that's the entire roster or the majority of the roster, I don't see it. I mean, yeah, and I guess this is what you were talking about, engendering a debate between you and I. I just vehemently disagree. With that probability.
So try to bring yourself to a neutral ground, and you give a percentage. Games in Tallahassee, again, they're not playing 10 games back and forth at both sites or neutral sites.
I mean, this year, somewhere between 1-6 and 1-8. So somewhere between 12.5% and 16.7%. Somewhere in there. I just don't. I mean, it would be. I mean, is it in the realm of possibilities? Yes. Would it be a big upset and a far stretch of the probability process to get to that result? I believe so. So yeah, somewhere between 1-6 and 1-8 would be objectively. And again, I said it last years in the past. Also, if you put the Miami resume team and the Florida State resume team blind on paper and presented them to people, even when Florida State was beating us those last 2 or 3 years, everybody would have picked the Miami profile team, the blind resume team. Okay. But you had to play them on paper, or you play on the field, right? And there was the intangibles of Miami nutting up. You had Florida State get a couple good plays. They had the mentality that they couldn't be beaten, so you had to beat them and then beat that mentality that they couldn't come back and win, and Miami was unable to do that. This year, I mean, last year it wasn't even close. Like, I didn't even need to have that. But this year, I believe you put the blind profiles of Florida State and Miami, I would say in 8 or 9 chances out of 10. People would pick the Miami profile team to win that game if you just put up the blind resume profiles, whether it be traditional counting stats, advanced stats. I just really think that there's still just a massive gulf between these two programs on the field. And it can change quickly, so I'm enjoying it now. And we saw this again in the opposite direction less than a decade ago. So I know it can change, But right now, they're like Morrow says, they're lost in the woods. Where we were lost in the woods, they're in that wood right now. And they have miles and miles to go before they sleep. Shout out to Robert Frost. Before they're out of those woods.
All right. I am churning out game by game probabilities for tons of teams, and I'll not. I think where I was at the time, and so there is no mathematical formula that I'm using. So I'll answer the question that I've been asked. No mathematical formula that I'm using, and I have, as I've brought up here during some conversations in the past, certainly looked at other win probabilities by the likes of ESPN and others and thought that they were ridiculous. So I certainly will take that feedback, and I understand it. And so maybe I miscalculated in my brain to a certain extent, but I was more in the range of, if this is a neutral site, it's 65-35. And so I'm going to give college football being what it is when you get a packed house in a stadium in terms of and understanding we're only a season removed from Florida State or Miami having very similar talent, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, they didn't have the quarterback that they have now, but having very similar talent in 2019 and dropping games to the likes of FIU and Duke and Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm. Right. And with all of that being said, still went up to Tallahassee, handled that business against Florida State, and it was 28-10, and it could have been worse. We ended up sitting on the ball a little bit in the second half and not extending that to 30 or 40. Last year, we didn't give them that same grace. And I don't think that grace is there to be given because, they're going to come out on an emotional high. I think that they're going to do their best, Florida State, that is. But I just don't, between 1-6 and 1-8. As a neutral side, I don't see it as 65-35. I probably see it as 75-25. Yeah, or 80-20. Just like in that same 1 out of 5-ish range. But objectively, I just don't think that they're. I don't think that they're there. I don't think that their coaching has them there. I don't think that they have the players for that. And I just think that is a small team. I looked up. I had to do a triple take. I tweeted out. I did a triple take when I watched their spring game because I thought it was optimist football. That is a small football team. And Miami's not the biggest team in the world, but we don't look like that. You have the random Malik Curtis and Jalen Knighton, who's 5'9", 5'10", speedsters and things like that. Their whole roster looked like that. It looked like something out of Mario Kart with the magic shrinking code or something. Like it just didn't. That did not look like a Florida State team because we've seen those games, man. Been in those stadiums. Well, not stadiums. I've never been to Tallahassee, so I've only been down here. But you see them come out and they raise them helmets up and they walk towards that end zone. Everybody's booing at them and they're saying, "Hey, okay," because they got this lineman and that lineman and this dude and that dude, all big and jacked and everything. And I don't see any of those guys, man. It looks different. And I know, again, you're as connected to your biggest rival as you are almost to your own team. I've seen what they do. I've talked about all these things. I've seen these teams. I've seen the construction of these rosters and everything. This is not a Florida State roster. They do not have Florida State players at key positions, i.e. quarterback, i.e. offensive line, still hot trash. They have not the work that they needed to do to close the gap between where Miami is and where they were. While Miami is maintaining, if not improving, Florida State is maintaining, if not regressing, in my estimation. I just still think it's night and day.
James Coleman played at Florida State 2002 to 2005. We have him on every week. And when I asked for his assessment at the spring game, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "We're small."
Come on now. I got eyes in my head and a brain that works. I don't got to be, I don't have to be the late great Howard Schnellenberger, rest his soul. I don't have to be, Vince Lombardi or any learned scholar of football, I can look and see that's a small team. That's a lot of small dudes. Like, yeah, I don't know, bro. I don't know. But yeah, I think that it is more decisively towards Miami's favor, any probability for this year's game. And leaving, again, room for the fact of, in the future, I think that this can change quickly if Florida State does what Florida State needs to do, because Florida State's still Florida State. Just like Miami was still Miami when they were whooping our ass, and we needed to come back and everything. And now things have flipped up. We're never going to lose to y'all again. We beat y'all 7, 8 in a row. We're on a 4-game win streak, about to run it to 5, and everything. Like, I get that. Things can change quickly. The work is there to be done. They still have that brand. They still got the Garnet and Gold. They still got Renegade. They still got that chop. They got that spear. They got all the things. They're still Florida State. So
they're still located in Florida.
Hello.
They're bringing the players.
So from Florida and South Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama, they still got that regional and national pull because they're still Florida State. Now, they need to do the work along that path to get there. So I know that this can change in the future. I've seen how this can change. And even as teams get closer together, you might still lose. Miami, again, very close, if not, should have probably won a couple of those games at the end of that losing streak. I get it. But the gap between the programs still did this. It still got closer. Miami still improved to getting towards where Florida State was. And they came down off of the national championship height of the pedestal of 2013 a little bit. And so coming down a little bit as a program, losing a couple games, helped that gap be closed. So obviously I think that we're closer. I would say we're further apart because they're worse now than we were when they were good. So I know that things can change. And I would expect, hopefully, for Florida State, I would hope for them that things in 2022 and 23 would change so that it would become closer and more of a competitive thing. But this season right here in 2021, nah, bro.
Okay. I will admit that I've been largely swayed.
That's right.
So I make some... I will not be ever one that will say that I'm always right and never wrong, and always say I'm going to stand by. Again, I'm churning through schedules, and I make my best stab within a 30-second time frame to say, okay. And who knows? Maybe I just come off a Florida State live stream. I don't know what my state of mind was, but
I know Big Game James influenced you.
Yeah, 58-42 is a bit narrow considering and I have been as honest and forthright and blunt in my assessment of Florida State football post. So 2016, as Cam had stated, 2016 was the last time they were good, not vintage good, but good, top 10, won an Orange Bowl, etc. Good. 2017 was one of those seasons where it came crumbling down because of Jimbo having his 1 foot out the door and all that. And they lost DeAndre Francois week 1 against Alabama. Tough schedule, blah, blah, blah. But they were still, they still looked the part. They were dropping really close games. They were 7-6, but they still looked the part. They still had dudes on the team. They were still really good in 2017. If you look at the results, they were barely, Clemson went to the playoffs, and Clemson beat them on the last possession of the game. They were still good.
That was 24-21 Darrell Langham on the last offensive snap of the game for Miami. You know what I mean? That it wasn't 52-10. Yeah, I hear you.
Tag's first year was the one that looked really like, wow, they're losing to Syracuse by 3 touchdowns. They're in week 10 not lining up properly. They're from a both physical and mental standpoint, just not even close to what they would be later. And then I'm watching them last year losing to 4-7 Louisville teams by 4 scores.
Yeah.
And I remember I had to search for them on the ESPN app to find their game against Louisville because we did some little post game or something. And I remember watching when it brought back memories when you brought up Jordan Travis of me thinking, is this guy a Florida State quarterback? He looks like he's shot putting the ball downfield.
I'm saying,
I did have a lapse of judgment.
It's not rocket science or astrophysics. You got a relatively short for the position, fast guy who cannot throw the ball. So it makes sense in high school as a dual threat quarterback. He can run around enough and they can scheme a guy high school wide open, running some zone read or something. Looks like I'm going to step out. Guy pulls up. I throw a bomb, whatever. You can do that. That's not a Florida State quarterback. I'm sorry, it's not. Whether you like, love, hate their program, that's not a Florida State quarterback. And you can look all the way back, all the guys who have played there, whether they're dual threat like a Charlie Ward, and then he was able to run, but he was more of a pocket passer than people remember, but he was also 6 feet tall, ended up playing in the the NBA with a long career because the Heisman Trophy winner didn't get drafted. Whatever, fine. Whether you look at Chris Winkie, whether you look at, hell, even the guys when, they were losing it. If you look at Chris Ricks, 6'4", 220, you look at Chris Winkie, you look at, what's his face from ESPN, who I hate, Danny Cannell. Exactly. You look at him, you look at any of these guys.
Busby.
You look at all these guys, bro. Look at Jameis. 6'3", 215, sure. Are going to be back to starting in the NFL this year. Like, those are Florida State quarterbacks, bro. And the one who is the outlier to that physical profile won a Heisman Trophy. And then people were, I saw them say, oh, yeah, if Jordan Travis wouldn't have gotten hurt against Miami game, then that's Charlie Ward 2.0. Y'all must be smoking and drinking that good stuff if you think that this kid is Charlie Ward. Do you remember Charlie Ward in college? Go look up those. That guy was different. I'm so sorry. And he could throw the ball. He could run. He could do anything that you want to do. Jordan Travis can't. With all due respect to Jordan Travis, again, a good athlete can play at Florida State, but if Florida State is anything like Florida State, Jordan Travis does not play quarterback. And that's just plain and simple. And then now we got a guy coming off of a 2-year absence because he has a reconstructed leg that almost had to get amputated from the knee down. And now it's going to be between him and then you got this Joe Purdy kid that they want to try to get some snaps, and this other freshman kid, other kid who, again, might be a depth guy at Florida State in years past, but now you're talking about, what's his name, Tate Rodemaker? You're trying to give him some snaps and everything too? For who? For what? If you're doing that, you're not Florida State. You're not. I'm sorry. And that's just the God's honest truth. And I mean, again, if people, hey, yeah, I know I've waxed poetic about the downfall and the deleterious or the negative situation or standing of the Florida State program on this Miami Live today, but that's the God's honest truth. And I went as hard against Miami when we were bad. Go back and look at these videos because right on here, I talked about our lack of talent and talked about all these things in the same terms because it's the same or worse situation for Florida State right now. And again, Miami fans are able to see it because we've seen it with our own program. So I've seen it right here and I look over there. Oh, yeah. It's like when you go out to dinner, and you see that couple arguing at the next table over oh, okay. Yeah, no, I've had that argument before, right? Because it's the same kind of a thing. And it's not a good situation then. It's not a good situation for them now. For us on the other side, we're going to continue to whip their ass, at least this year, in a pretty decisive way. So I'm not, troubled by it or anything, but that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
All right. Yes. I won't say anything else. Sasha, best show. Cam takes it to a high yet credible level. Go Canes. Thank you so much for that, Sasha.
High yet credible.
I think she means intensity, knowledge combined.
Yes. I am intense.
Intensity and emotion combined with the knowledge. So a credible level, ranting and raving, not knowing what you're talking about, but not certainly the fire and the brimstone comes with the knowledge as well. Sasha, I believe that you contributed here recently, and I failed to acknowledge that. So, Sasha, I hope you're listening because I always feel bad when that happens, when I see those post-show. I got swagged by Cam. I didn't have much to come back there because I thought I would be arguing. I would just be arguing just to argue, just to try to save face and prove that my percentage makes sense. But I'm not going to do that because I would argue somewhat effectively, but probably mostly ineffectively, again to save face.
Hey, and
that's the number I came up with.
Well, no, I mean, it goes both ways because I forget what it was last year, but you said something that I disagreed with, and then you laid it out. I was like, you know what? I looked at it differently, and I agree. So, I mean, we've gone back and forth on it, but yeah. Or not on this one point, but yeah, in general.
Yeah, and my percentage, I'll just say one last thing about it. My percentage doesn't make sense, and I would call somebody else out on this. So I want to be called out. As I say all the time, our aim, I don't think we accomplish this all the time, but the aim is best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. And so that doesn't put me in a glass house somewhere and everybody else is wrong and I can take shots at everybody else, but nobody can take a shot at me on my own channel. Of course,
Yeah.
I want me to be challenged. So my percentage is what I should have matched them up in a very simple way. How many times have I stated since the end of last season that I see Miami as, and have put them in my rankings as roughly a top 15 team in the nation? And I've said Florida State's more like 55, 60, 65. Well, that's not a 58-42 win probability difference.
You said it, my friend.
All right, Cam. Thank you so much. I got scolded. I'll move on from here. No, I deserve that. That's good. And had I ardently thought once I heard Cam's dissertation, no, I'm still at 42%, 58-40. Then I would have argued, but I didn't have a whole lot to go on. So I will admit that my judgment was off there. Falcon ERX, thank you so much again for the contribution. We appreciate those so much. All right, Cam. You know, something said that was stated in the live chat reminded me that next Thursday will be the NFL draft. So we'll have to get together and figure out what would be a better day and time.
Yeah.
Sure we'll both want to kick back and watch it.
Well, there's that. And, you know, at least one, if not two, Miami Hurricanes are going to be drafted in the first round. So want to be able to have live reaction on the website, at least for that and everything. So be on the lookout for draft profiles, which should be hitting the interwebs very soon. So we have that. All kinds of other stuff. I'm actually working on 2 or 3 different pieces right now on the website because I just needed to get my fingers to do some walking. So we have that. We have some other guys writing, thinking about some content that they're going to post as well. So just be sure that you check us out, stateoftheu.com, always open 24/7, 365. And hey, get caught up on some of those things. Again, the class numbers and needs for 2022 are up on the website in the recruiting tab. So if you're looking for that piece that I talked about, that Holloway asked about earlier, that's up there. The recruiting rules are still up there. Our National Signing Day coverage is still up there. The baseball coverage, basketball coverage, there's all kinds of things there. So please come over and fan with us. Also, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The State of the U. My personal Twitter account is at Underwood Sports. I'm about to run and get some dinner and then live tweet Top Chef because we have a new episode of Top Chef tonight. And that, my friends, is that. And we'll see you soon. So thanks for stopping by with us. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, we're back with Clemson talk, possibly. I don't know at this point. It was supposed to be at 8 o'clock. I completely lost track of time.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's not 8 o'clock anymore.
All right, Cam. We'll see you. Thanks.
Sorry about that. See you, Mark.